present our final award for the evening, I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Robert Sellers, Parliament of World Religions Board President, who will introduce the Reverend Dr. Paul Eppinger Award. Dr. Sellers.
What an honor it is to be here this evening, to recognize all of the Golden Rule Award winners, to be with all of you from this part of Arizona, and to be reminded once again what a great work the Arizona Interfaith movement is doing. But it's especially rich to be here with our dear friends Paul and Sybil, and with their daughters Damaris, Priscilla, Stephanie, and Monica, and their families. The Eppinger family has come to mean so much to Janie and to me. My friendship with Dr. Paul Eppinger dates from 2008, when as a Baptist Christian I joined the Interfaith Relations Commission of the National Council of Churches, USA. And at that very first meeting, I was introduced to another Baptist in the group, a very active commissioner named Paul Eppinger. And I soon realized that Paul was highly respected and well-liked by all of the other members of the commission, women and men who were denominational leaders, interfaith officers, university and seminary scholars, nonprofit administrators, and parish clergy, representing approximately 25 Christian communions of the National Council. And because Paul and I were both progressive Baptists, we quickly became friends, and he and his delightful soulmate, Sybil, who would often come with Paul to the meetings wherever they were happening around the United States, would join with me for breakfast in our hotel, and our friendship and our mutual appreciation grew. And so it was no surprise in 2009 when my wife Janie and I were in Melbourne, Australia for the Parliament of the World's Religions to run into Paul and Sybil. And they were there with 9 or 10 of you from the Arizona Interfaith movement. And the four of us went across the road to enjoy lunch one day, but we didn't really have a long time to linger over our lunch because Paul, always enthusiastic and energetic and effervescent, was eager to get back to those he called my gang from Arizona and to the presentation that they would make at the Parliament. After Melbourne, I was privileged to be elected a trustee of the Parliament of the World's Religions, an entity that some say is the oldest and certainly the largest interfaith organization in the world. It's certainly the best known, and you can read about it in books of history or religion textbooks. It's widely credited with coining the phrase interfaith dialogue. The Parliament has ongoing programs like a Faith Against Hate campaign and the Partner Cities program, the Sacred Spaces initiative, as well as educational components like webinars and training emerging religious and interreligious leaders. It partners with a dedicated cadre of ambassadors in many parts of the world, and with the United Nations as a member NGO, with the Charter for Compassion, with the women's and indigenous and youth task forces that advocate for the rights of these oppressed groups in our country and around the world. But the most well-known aspect of what the Parliament of the World's Religions does is that periodic large meeting that was just held last October in Salt Lake City. Some of you were there, and Paul and Sybil were there. About 10,800 people were there from 80 nations and 50 religions in Salt Lake City to celebrate our harmony and our purpose together. When I was named chair of the nominations committee of the Parliament, one of the first persons that I knew I had to recommend to become a trustee was Paul Eppinger. And my hunch was correct, and the members of the committee and then the full board of trustees unanimously elected Paul because they were as impressed with him as I was and as you are. And every time Paul came to one of our meetings, he would bring greetings from the Arizona Interfaith movement. He would bring calendars to distribute. He would bring stories of what you were doing and inspired us with all the great things that are happening in Arizona. But most of all, he brought his obvious love for people, his profound commitment to the interfaith movement, his personal integrity, and his wisdom, and his deep and abiding faith. And so in Salt Lake, it was not by accident at all, but by grand intention that the Parliament gave Paul Eppinger a Golden Rule Award. And as we celebrated in a banquet not quite as large as this one, but in a wonderful banquet there in Salt Lake, and we talked about the marvelous work of this man and his spirit, then Paul responded, and it was a breathtaking response. Later, the chair of the board at that time, Malik Mujahid, wrote that this was the most wonderful speech at the Parliament, the one that Paul Eppinger gave. Paul, your fellow trustees have learned so much from you. We admire you, we love you, we pray for you, and we miss you at our meetings. Paul, you are truly our most revered interfaith hero. Thank you.
Before becoming the director of the Arizona Interfaith Movement in 1995, for which he's perhaps best known, Paul led a long and illustrious 40-year career as a Baptist minister. He began as a missionary in Japan from 1956 to 1958. One of the places that Paul visited was Hiroshima, which still had not been rebuilt after the dropping of the atomic bomb.
And one of the things that he saw there was devastation just after the war. And from that point on, he determined to be a man of peace. Peace among people, peace among nations, peace among religions.
Upon returning to the U.S., Paul married Sybil, whom he had met while in a missionary training program. Because Paul was deployed to Japan and Sybil to the Philippines, they had only seen each other 3 times over 3 years, but had really gotten to know one another via the post office. It wasn't long before they started a family. Paul attended seminary school at Princeton University, where he received a master's in divinity and a master's in theology. From 1960 to 1968, he served as pastor at Preakness Baptist Church in Wayne, New Jersey.
He established a program for the mentally challenged children that were in his congregation, and provided a wonderful forum for them to be taught and to have a place of fellowship and a place of acceptance. In his second church in Pennsylvania, he established a wonderful program there for the street children, children that were disadvantaged in every way. And after school, he had a program for them at this church, and they fed them food and played games, just a place to get off the street and have a safe environment. And then in his third church, he had in Kansas a program for the singles group, a group of people who at that time in our country's history, there were a lot of single organizations being started, but he was on the leading edge, and a group of 200 or 300 people were coming to that particular program in his church. And then here in Phoenix, when he had his church, there was a home there for homeless men that he established, and also a program for AIDS victims. It was a time then when there was no cure for AIDS, and it was a terminal disease to be sure. And Paul would counsel with them, provide programs, and just a place for them to gather and to talk.
In 1992, Paul retired from the pastorate and was approached to become the state executive director of the campaign to create an official Martin Luther King holiday. Paul seized the opportunity because of his interest in social justice and because he was there that historic day in 1963.
Paul and I were the ebony and ivory brothers who stood up for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday when it was not popular to do so. I was the chair of two coalitions fighting for the King holiday. In both of those, he was either the vice chair or the campaign manager for the Victory Together that eventually won in November of 1992.
Instead of settling down into retirement after his long career in ministry, Paul became the director of the Arizona Ecumenical Council in 1993.
A small group of us, 5 or 6 of us, were talking one day, all Christians, and someone said there's a lot of other faith groups here in Arizona. We at least ought to get acquainted with them.
Thus was born the Arizona Interfaith Movement.
The Arizona Interfaith Movement was founded in 1995 with 8 different faith groups involved, seeking to know how we can work with one another. From the very beginning, we've been based on 3 principles. The first is understanding. We want to understand each other's concept of God, life, truth, eternal life, salvation, prison reform, abortion, whatever the topic, we want to understand. The second word is respect. By that we mean there's no proselytizing, no dehumanizing. Rather, we want to respect all people. The third word is support. By that we mean if any person or any group is violated because of their faith, we are there immediately to help them and support them.
Paul has become the voice of interfaith, not just here in Arizona, but across the nation and around the world. He's often been heard to say that interfaith is the future of the world. And mercy, wouldn't we agree that there's so much harm and damage done in the name of God and religion, not just these days, but across the centuries?
Dr. Eppinger's legacy of bringing people together in love and collaboration is really what builds community. So Dr. Eppinger, to you and your family, a job well done. You leave a tremendous legacy in this community.
Paul is one who stands up for what he believes, and regardless of the consequences, if he believes an issue or principle is right, is tied in with justice for all, he will stand up for that regardless of the consequences. And he's had losses in the ministry here in Arizona as a result of people not agreeing with how he stands. But we need more leaders like Paul Eppinger.
He's always thinking about how to make things better and how to take people to that next level of love and next level of cooperation and next level of understanding.
Paul, you are so deserving of this award tonight, and an award given in your name. I mean, how amazing and how unusual is that? Paul Eppinger receiving the Paul Eppinger Award. I love you, Paul. I'm grateful for my friendship with you and with Sybil, and I thank God for you.
Paul, we just want to thank you for all the leadership that you've given to us from the very beginning. It was your idea, it was your passion of the Arizona Interfaith Movement. It's the seed that you planted in our hearts and our minds, and so we all want to say to you, thank you, Paul! We love you!
After living a healthy, active lifestyle for 80 years, Paul was diagnosed with ALS in 2014.
But I have lived 82 years of a wonderful life, 57 years with an incredible marriage partner. I can't ask for anything more. If this is the way that God wants to take me, so be it. In fact, I'm looking forward to death, to that 1 second or that 1 minute after I die, to see, hey, this is what it's all about. And I especially want to see, is there anyone else in heaven besides members of the and supporters of the Arizona Interfaith Movement? It'll be a joy to be a part of that. So if this is my destiny, so be it. God has been good to me, and I want to be faithful in every way to the very end of my days.
For his deeply caring and philanthropic service to others in the many dynamic ways he's impacted thousands of people, including youth. Our final honoree has been a shining example of living the golden rule, not only in Arizona, but nationally and internationally. There's nothing more to say than, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paul Eppinger.
Well, I would want to say thank you to the Arizona Interfaith Movement. It has been my privilege to be a part of it and to join with marvelous people from all these different faiths to seek to come to know each other, to love each other in a greater, more practical way, and to help build peace in the world. So I would say I want to thank the Arizona Interfaith Movement for who you have been and who you are and who you're going to continue to be in the future. I believe world peace comes from this kind of deep relationship from all faith groups, from all people of faith, where we can not be focusing on those doctrinal items that divide us, but rather unite ourselves around those great truths that unite us. All the other speakers have said they had not prepared a speech, but I've got to let you know, I've prepared a speech. And know there are members of the board who are saying right now, Paul, cut it off, that's enough. But I do have some things that I want to share very deeply with you. You can see that I'm in this wheelchair. In high school, you saw a couple of pictures of football and track and things. I've always been so happy that in my senior year in high school, playing football, I ran the opening kickoff of the first game back 98 yards for a touchdown right there. And now, of course, very frankly, friends, I cannot stand for 1 second. I cannot take one step. This ALS disease has attacked my body. Medical science says there is no reason why it attacks
certain persons, they also say there is no cure for the disease. Rather, the average lifespan of a person with ALS is from 2 to 4 years. Some people live many years beyond that. Many live just a few months. As my doctors have looked at it, it appears I have had the disease for over 2 years now. And so I don't want to be melodramatic or anything else, but in my own soul, I'm quite certain I will not be able to be at a Golden Rule banquet anymore in my life. Rather, if my faith is correct, I'll be in heaven, and I'll be looking down and saying, who are the awardees this year? And I will be cheering each of you on. And again, just share with you. My dream has been that this Golden Rule banquet would become the banquet of the year every year. Not with just 1,000 people attending, but why not 5,000 or 10,000 to say to the world, as you open your newspaper in the morning or watch television news in the evening, and you see all the corruption and all the violence, there are still some people that are doing the right thing, and we are celebrating those people, these three that we honor tonight. What a magnificent thing they each have done. So let's again say to each of them, thank you for everything you are doing. Now, the ALS disease that almost all of you would know is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Lou Gehrig was the star first base player for the New York Yankees in the 1920s and the 1930s. Sometime in late in the season, in 1939, the Yankees decided they would honor Lou Gehrig. So he was there. He had batted dozens of home runs in Yankee Stadium. He had run the bases, but on this day, he could not hold a bat in his hand, could not take 2 steps. But in his speech, Lou Gehrig made a statement. I consider myself to be the luckiest man in the world on the face of the earth. Now look at him. Can't hold a baseball bat, can't take 2 steps, but the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I don't know why he said that, but I want to adapt his words and say those same words. I consider myself to be the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And I want to give you just a couple of examples why I feel that. Number one, it's because of the woman that I've had the privilege of being married to for 57 years. She has been my spiritual support, my mentor, my lover, the mother of our 4 children, everything. In fact, 10 years ago, this lady was named the Arizona Mother of the Year. So I am so proud. And because of that, I feel like I am the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Now let me say another thing. We have been blessed with 4 incredible daughters. They're sitting at the table right over here tonight. The oldest, her name is Damaris. Damaris, all 4 of them have graduated from college. Damaris, who's coming right now, is doing an amazing work with refugees from around the world, teaching them how to become American citizens. The second daughter is Dr. Priscilla Eppinger. You'll get kind of used to this in a second. 4 daughters, 3 of them have PhDs. So they all got their mama's brains. Priscilla is a university professor at a university in Iowa and of a seminary in Missouri. The third daughter is Dr. Stephanie Eppinger, and Stephanie has a PhD in psychology and is head of an incredible program at a VA hospital in Virginia where they are treating women who have been sexually violated in the Army. Their third daughter is Dr. Monica. Fourth daughter is Dr. Monica Eppinger. And Monica is unique in that she has 2 doctor's degrees, one from Yale University School of Law, and the other PhD from the University of California in Berkeley. So because of this, I feel I am the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Without inviting them to come forward, I'd like to invite 2 of my 3 sons-in-law, Mr. David Menninger and Lieutenant Commander Leon Crane. Marvelous sons-in-law. But then I want to introduce my 2 grandsons who are right here with me. They helped lead in the prayers this evening, Lyle and Paul Cooksey. I want to lift them up for just a second because many of you prayed for them. A year ago, this last Christmas, on December the 20th, the Saturday before Christmas, their high school wrestlers And they had been in a wrestling program Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, to about 2 o'clock. They both had won 6 matches and lost 1. They are champion wrestlers. On their way home from the school to their farm, about 10 miles, they had only been on the road for about 2 miles. There was no snow, there was no ice, there was no fog, a perfect day for traveling on the 2-lane highway. But as they traveled down this 2-lane highway, speed limit is 65, so they were going 65. A woman who had been drinking crossed over into their lane immediately before she got to them and crashed head on into their pickup. She was killed immediately. Their airbags imploded, protected their face, their head, their bodies, but from the waist down, there was broken hip and broken legs and crushed feet. I mean, totally annihilated. They were pulled out of the windshield of the truck, taken to a hospital in Denver. They were there for 10 days and with all kinds of surgery. And then they were allowed to go home in wheelchairs, hospital beds. They couldn't return to school until about the middle of April. Now they were beginning to walk some. Last summer, they prayed and prayed, God, please allow us to wrestle again in our senior year. And so they worked out. There's 150 pounds in each of these guys, 150 pounds of shifting steel and sex appeal. So they began wrestling last fall. They made, even with all the crushed bones, they made the wrestling team, and their other prayer was that they would be able to return to the state wrestling tournament in Denver. That happened, my friends, in February. And so these guys.
Wrap it up, Paul. Wrap it up.
My brother Larry Fultz is saying, Paul, wrap it up, wrap it up. Larry, I gave 20 years of my life. So
you have to keep these people 20 years.
You can take a seat. But anyway, these boys, these 2 boys were named the student athletes of the northern half of Colorado in February. I believe I'm the luckiest man. I want to go on and say, I believe I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth because of the privilege of working with the Arizona Interfaith movement. What an incredible group of people. Larry has already mentioned the board. I honor all of you on the board and that have been on the board any time in the last 20 years. Then Larry mentioned 2 women Nancy Hoffman, and Ann Taylor. What a joy it has been to work with them. And then I believe I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth because the new director of the Arizona Interfaith Movement, my dear friend, Larry Foltz. Larry has been on the job for 4 months, and I've got to tell you, he has done more in the last 4 months than the other director, whatever his name, I forget his name, than the other director did in the last 4 years. But we
It's been
are
6 months.
okay. And then I want to say, I believe I am the luckiest man on the face of the earth because of all of you here tonight. The Arizona Interfaith Movement, as Dr. Sellers mentioned, is known around the nation and known in many places of the world as one of the most outstanding interfaith programs in the world. And you all here tonight, you're a part of that. You are ones that designate what this thing is all about. So I believe, again, I have been blessed, and I'm one of the luckiest men on the face of the earth. Now, the board are the ones who put together this idea of the Paul Eppinger Award. Now, the Golden Rule Awards we have given are from people that we've known locally that have done such an incredible job. But the Paul Eppinger Award, they have told me, is open to anyone across the nation or across the world who is doing strong interfaith work. Now imagine, that could mean that we're pulling in somebody from Philadelphia or Miami or whoever it might be. But it could mean we'll be pulling in somebody from Berlin or Cairo or New Delhi or Singapore or anywhere around the world. Look what that does. It gives us the opportunity of hearing what they are doing in their part of the world, and then it gives us the opportunity of sharing with them, this is what the Arizona Interfaith Movement is doing. So, how do you pay for the travel? If we bring somebody in from Cairo, if we bring somebody in from wherever, how do we pay for the travel and then the expenses of hosting them, even for 2 or 3 days? I was a pastor back in Pennsylvania 40 years ago, and there was a family in that church that Sybil and I and our 4 little daughters at that time got to know and love. They had 2 daughters and 2 sons. Hadn't been in contact. 3 daughters and 2 sons. We hadn't been in contact with most of them for 40 years. but I think it was last October or sometime, I got a phone call from one of the daughters. That daughter is now middle adult, and she wanted to come to see us because of my illness. We talked. I told her about Arizona Golden Rule Banquet. She said, I want to come. She has married a man who is very successful in his business. And she said, Paul, how are you going to pay for the people traveling? I told her I don't have the slightest idea. She came tonight and presented me a note that says we're happy to present, I won't tell you the amount, but it's a very sizable check. We are happy to present this check to you, Arizona Interfaith Movement, as a part of a total pledge in honor, memory of her mother and daddy, Tom and Ruth Wolford. The balance of this pledge will be in 4 yearly checks over the next 5 years. Our idea, friends, is that we will not touch the principal, but the interest will be to use to bring the person from Cairo. It's a and I want to present this check right now to Larry Fultz, and I would like to ask Ruth Beth Myers right down here to stand up. She and her husband are the ones in New Jersey. All right. You can see they are far away, being in Pennsylvania. They are far away from the valley here, but the Arizona Interfaith Movement is impacting them, and they certainly are impacting the Arizona Interfaith Movement. So I want to say, in the words of Lou Gehrig, I believe I am one of the luckiest men on the face of the earth. And I would like for you to join me at the church that Sybil and I are members of now, the Shadow Rock UCC Church. Every Sunday, we close that service by the leader saying, "This is the day," and the congregation responds, and then he says, "We are the people," and the congregation responds. Now, he'll go on for 2 more sentences, but I'd like to do that with you tonight. And let me just say, friends, forget that most of us here are white, whatever we are. Imagine you are in an African American church. You don't just mumble, you let it go, all right? So I invite you to repeat after me. This is the day.
This is the day.
We are the people.
We are the people.
Let us work for justice.
Let us work for justice.
Let us live for peace.
Let us live for peace.
us build a new world.
Let us build a new world
Of equality, compassion, and love for all.
and love for all.
Amen. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Please stand as we honor our dear friend. I knew it was a mistake to tell him he had 5 minutes to speak. If you have been touched by Paul Eppinger tonight, would you just raise your hand? Thank you. There's the people that you've touched tonight, Paul, and throughout your life. We thank you so much for what you've given to us and your life and your family. Thank you, and God bless you, my friend. We love you.